So there's an important story that's ongoing that's getting some coverage, but I still don't know how much it's penetrating, the consciousness of people. So we're really hoping that you could break it down. So Louis, can you just explain for the people who are unaware what's happening to the thousands of people who were released from federal prison by the Trump administration at the height of COVID-19 and how the Biden administration is responding to that?
Thank you for actually raising the amplification on this issue. And I'm not certain a lot of folks have heard the term CARES, but I don't know if they know what that stands for. Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, right? It was the CARES Act. And it was designed to be a pressure valve for the federal prison system, but also, provide some compassion to people who are in cages during the height of COVID or the pandemic. And since that time, there's been this surge of belief that because folks have been vaccinated, because COVID numbers have dropped, for some reason, those folks that were allowed to be sent home to home confinement, for some reason, the Office of Legal Counsel, which is a department of the Department of Justice, believes that almost 4,000 people who have been home since January should go back to prison. Now we believe that this is a canary in a coal mine moment for Biden in regards to compassion, in regards to really holding to the campaign promises he made Black folks while he ran, and just being, a bit frank. Also, going back to the 94 crime bill, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So we feel like there are some things that we don't believe holding people, to the fire for the rest of their lives, but certainly we believe in holding folks accountable that ran on a certain platform, which indicated that they would employ compassion, reason, and not punishment as a means of reducing the impact of mass incarceration on American families. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, Louis, I'm wondering if you've had a chance to speak with any of these people, and if so, sort of what's their emotions like? What's going on over there in their households?
Several of the families, we believe that people are experts in their own conditions. And as we are looking to talk to Biden, we want to make sure that the folks who are directly impacted by these issues are doing the most talking. And so folks across the nation are dealing with having come home to their families, being able to father again, being able to mother again, in some cases even have an opportunity of going to college, doing things that obviously if they were in prison they wouldn't be able to do. But I think more importantly, because they're out of prison, they're able to do. And so, the feeling is, I'm finally home with my family, and you're going to rip our family apart? I'm finally out of that cage, and now I have to go back. And I think it's so important for us to remember that the folks who were released were First Step Act eligible. Even more so, they even made the conditions more stringent. So these folks haven't been convicted of anything more than a white-collar crime or a drug-related crime. Not that we should delineate between those two, but just to kind of, assuage people's fears. Those folks that we're talking about, the 4,000 people who were released, were folks who were elderly, or folks who had been convicted of nonviolent crimes, folks who, in most cases, shouldn't have been there in the first place. So let's get that. So let's be clear there. the onus of the people that we're talking about sending back to prison shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I think that part of it is missed.
Yeah, definitely. And Louis, thank you for bringing up the what these people were initially charged of, especially the drug crimes, obviously, which we know still has an ongoing. The drug war is still ongoing, and it's hurting people even who were arrested and convicted years or decades ago. Louis, can you just the COVID experience was sort of, a lot of experts pointed to that as this pivotal moment, especially in this era of mass incarceration, where we can take this as an opportunity to release people, decarcerate the prisons and jails in this country. And it seems like we're obviously going a step back in some cases. So can you just sort of talk about the importance you mentioned earlier, but of decarcerating during COVID, just because of how that disease spreads like wildfire and other diseases spread like wildfire inside these institutions, and sort of why it's still important?
Absolutely. And I'll take that in two pieces. I think what's most important is that the most effective vaccination is decarceration.
Right.
Time and time again, the science has shown us that the less amount of people that is in a confined space or in a space period, the less transmissible the virus is. And so what we have tried to show from the very beginning is that science has indicated that when you depopulate these correctional facilities, jails, prisons, and detention centers, you dramatically reduce the transmission rate, but also the infection rate, which subsequently impacts the death rate. And so far, there have been, almost 2,000 people who have died from COVID. And while that doesn't, seem like a lot compared to the amount of people that have died in America, there's 2,000 people in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And those are folks that died because they were not sentenced to death. They were sentenced based upon us not knowing how to handle social control beyond the cage. Nonetheless, the threat of COVID then is almost has almost been exasperated because the root issue has never been dealt with in jails, prisons, and detention centers. Even now, guards are refusing to get vaccinated. Even now, the rise in death rates is indicative of the fact that the way we are approaching the coronavirus in jails, prisons, and detention center has been a lambasted failure.
Yeah.
Now, with the Delta variant, we are actually considering taking people who have been home and putting them in an environment where they can possibly contract an even deadlier iteration of this virus, not because they did something wrong, not because they came home and improved their lives, but because the OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel, is bent on following this directive to the letter. Now, I think it's very important to understand we're not asking Congress to do anything. All we're asking Biden to do is keep to your word, do what you said you were going to do. But it's not hard. It's not even a process or a procedure question. It's about signing an executive order in compassion, saying that these folks not only deserve to stay home, but they shouldn't have been locked up in the first place. But the only way for us to restore the soul of America is to begin to deal with those folks in those cages.
And Louis, if Biden goes through with this, as you mentioned, and we all know his stated reforms, wouldn't this be hypocritical? And if so, how does the common person call him out on that?
As we are watching plea bargains being handed out for attacking the Capitol. As we are watching police officers tearfully replay the events of that day, we are actually find it complexing that we're having this conversation about keeping people out of prison while we have folks attack the Capitol and we're giving them plea bargains. Not that we are comparing that in any sense, but we're saying, let's fix one thing first, which is something you broke 30 years ago. Let's fix that first. Let's hold you to what you said you were going to do, which is reduce the impact and the footprint of mass incarceration in Black and brown communities if we voted for you. And most importantly, let's begin to look at compassion as an antidote to mass incarceration, because punishment in cages hasn't worked thus far.
Yeah. And Louis, so often don't like to throw out these stats because, people, like you mentioned, this nation has yet to deal with the societal problems that have contributed to mass incarceration and why people are in this situation. But I think it was the director of the federal prison system himself who said of the 20,000 people recently released over a few years, about only 20 people recommitted crimes. All right. So it shows that releasing people work. So can you just talk about that, how releasing people and the way in which you do it is better for society?
Absolutely. When we talk about the economic vitality of America right now and how businesses are having a difficult time finding employees, it's not because there are not employees available. It's because we have set this certain standard of employment that is based upon a person's worst day of their life for the rest of their lives. The fact that I did 8 years in prison, 12 years on parole has nothing to do with my ability to run a cash register. And as we look at the long-term impact of our approach to reducing crime and our approach to addressing crime, what we've actually done is created a third-class citizen within our citizenry, within our citizen ranks. And it's a permanent class. I got convicted when I was 22 years old. I am 51, and just last month, my wife and I were attempting to find a home, and Governor Murphy signed a Fair Chance Housing Act. And so what they use in response is a credit report. So I did 12 years on parole. I couldn't find employment. McDonald's wouldn't hire me. So of course my credit has a hole in it. Then I've got child support payments that show up as loans. They don't show up as child support payments. They don't say I'm paying on those. It just shows up as an outstanding loan. And so my point is, as folks are leaving prisons, jails, and institutions, not only are they dealing with the trauma of being in a cage, but they're also dealing with trying to reacclimate themselves to an environment that has become not only adverse to their families, but adverse to them entering back into it. Yet our economy depends on fair chance housing. Our economy depends on fair chance hiring. I would venture to say that there's not one store owner, one business owner that doesn't want everyone in the community around his store employed. I'm quick to say that the best way to stop a bullet is with a job.
Right.
And so as we are looking at addressing mass incarceration, we really have to think about the way law enforcement undergirds our economic system. Now I'm taking off my ACLU hat for a moment and talking and talking about how, we've got school police, we got park police, we got state police, we got federal police, we got secret police that watch the secret police, we got judges, we got lawyers, we got courtrooms. So our whole economic system is built upon its law enforcement. structure. And we wonder why there's such a push to get people back in there. And we wonder why there's such a rush to make sure that we don't legalize marijuana as quickly as possible. And that we still are locking folks up in states where marijuana is legal. There are folks still doing time.
Right.
Because of there's a law and there is an economic incentive to incarcerate Black and brown bodies at a rate that has been indicative of why mass incarceration has become such a decimating impact on Black and brown communities across the country. As you've often heard the statistic, we hold 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population. Even on the best days, those ratios don't play out. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's incredible insights, and horrifically underreported, as you know.
And I'm jealous of Manny's glasses and his hat and those headphones. I just want you to know off top. And
it's all I contribute to the show.
If my wife was here, she would tell you that you are a fashion icon.
I appreciate that.
You don't need to blow. You need to blow his head.
We're going to be hearing about this every future show now.
I gotta give props where props are due.
It's all good. You know, I was initially upset. I thought we were having Conway the Machine on the show. You know what I mean? But
Buffalo, New York. Listen, I've been trying to reach out to my brother. I'm like, Conway, it's your bro.
Let's go.
You know, I got a son in Rochester. You know, I'm originally from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And so when I found about Conway the Machine, I told my wife, I say, baby, we got family in Buffalo. We don't even know. We got family in Buffalo. It's my man.
That's right. Griselda represent. It's all good.
Absolutely.
All good.
You guys do great work, and I'm honored and humbled to be on your show.
Appreciate you.
We're honored and humbled to have you. And I just have one last question for you. I want to bring it back to our first question, really about that impact on families. And now our next guest after you, Dr. Ram Sandaresh, he just co-authored this study on incarceration and family health, and just basically underscoring how when you lock someone up and you put them in a cage, you're not just locking up an individual and putting them in a cage, you're putting an entire family, you're putting their friends and family. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little more just about, these people are home now. Like you said, they're back being fathers, they're back being mothers, and just what this is going to do, what Biden's going to do to these families.
That's such a salient point when you talk about the collateral consequences. The collateral benefits of compassion, the collateral consequences of taking a punishment route towards incarceration and towards our criminal system. I think, it's 4,000 people that we're able to index, but the impact is exponential. Every individual has at least two parents. So that brings that 4,000 already up to 8,000. Some folks, at least have one child. Most folks have two. So now that number's up to 16,000 folks who are impacted. Some folks went to prison and their grandmother, they were taking care of their grandmother. They were taking care of their grandfather. They were taking care of their aunts. So when you look at the exponentiality of the impact of locking folks up, bringing folks home and sending them back, you're literally talking about tens and thousands of folks who are going to be impacted. Again, these folks should have never been locked up in the first place. I think it's important for us to keep that kind of forward.
Right.
Secondly, they should never be eligible to be sent back. Having them in prison has done nothing for our safety. Having them in prison has only harmed our economy. Having them in prison has only decimated their families, destroyed the connective tissues of our community, and literally dissolved the fabric of our democracy. And so at what point are we going to look to compassion as an antidote to mass incarceration.
It's amazing, Louis. We really appreciate it. Just really quick, if you could help people out, let them know sort of what they can do to maybe spread the word and inform, their family and friends, and also reach the Biden administration. I know there was a Twitter hashtag that went viral, but so can you just talk about ways in which people can get involved really quick?
Absolutely. Well, the first way is ACLU.org/clemency. We have a petition that we're going to present to the Biden administration. You can also, again, go to ACLU.org, and we've got a CARES Act package, right?
Right.
But I think most importantly is for you to reach out to your congressman and really share with them what you believe, compassion means, and what you believe he should do in regards to what he said he would do.
Right.
I think that's most